I'm a newbie. Been using FileMaker for since COVID started, basically. Still learning. I've met a number of you in this group and talked to you separate, or a couple people separately. But I just had my first COVID shot today, and I'll tell you, my arm is sore and I'm tired. But I didn't think that was supposed to happen until the second shot. But anyways, I got my first one today. And my favorite milkshake is strawberry. The only problems I have with that is to do it right, you have to have real strawberries and they get stuck in the straw all the time. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
All right. How about Kim Coles?
Okay, hello. I have been using FileMaker for about, I don't know, FileMaker 9. That's all I can think of. And geez, I don't even remember all the questions. Okay, so I work for, so as most of you know, plumbing commercial plumbing and hardware distributor. And so I've been using FileMaker 9 and the milkshake. I did like a loaded milkshake. It was a toasted almond tort type of milkshake that you would get at, one of those burger places that make your own burger. I can't even think of the name of it. But it was loaded, and that's why I liked it. All right.
All right, that sounds yummy. How
Thank
about Paul Sprague?
Yeah, I'm based in Southern Connecticut. I've been using FileMaker probably almost as long as Bev. I think I started in 1989. I currently work in the IT department of a big printing company called Quad, and I'm involved in my family's business, which is a local publishing company and print shop. And I have exactly once in my life had a Shamrock Shake. I thought it was pretty darn good, and I'm going to try and score one again this St. Patrick's Day.
All right, sounds good. Jill.
Yeah, I'm Jill Wellman. I have been using FileMaker since FileMaker 9. I wouldn't have known that, except that's what Kim said. And she and I started, did we start FileMaker? No, we started this meeting together, I guess. Must have been 9, it was 9. I'm retired now and not really doing a lot of FileMaker. I love coming to these meetings and admiring all you guys. And milkshakes. Boy, I'm boring on milkshakes. I can't think of anything better than a chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the better.
All right, Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Hallinan. I've been using FileMaker almost since it began. As of today, I am retired. So I used to work at Carnegie Mellon. So I don't know, I'm looking and I'll see what I might do with FileMaker now that I don't have to do it for work anymore. Favorite milkshake, probably banana.
All right.
Or blueberry, but they get stuck in the straw like the strawberries do.
It's like an approve of the banana, so excellent choice. So Mr. Mueller.
Hi, Paul Mueller. I've been using FileMaker since it came on the little disk version 1. I'm retired. I still write and develop solutions, but mine are primarily for food banks, food pantries, so that they can complete all their state and federal reports, and they do it on iPads that connect to the program itself. Anyhow, I really appreciate coming to these to find out everything that you guys have been doing. You're far more advanced than I am, but I keep learning something new every day. My favorite milkshake is the chocolate. However, whoever said Shamrock Shake, that gets me too. And they're just coming in. So Shamrock Shake. Ken, was that you?
What's a shamrock shake? I
No,
have
that
to
was
try
mine.
to
They
find out.
have it at McDonald's only
that
only
was
on St.
Paul.
Patrick's Day
Yeah.
or
Oh,
St.
okay.
Patrick's Week. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe they have it a little more than that.
Yeah, they have it during the month of March, I think.
Okay.
Anyhow, that's one of my
Oh,
favorites.
so you think they're out now?
I can't answer that.
All right, I'm gonna have to go looking now.
They
Yeah.
also have a mint one at Arby's that's pretty good if you can't find one at McDonald's.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Paul.
Paul, they're available because my daughter just called me yesterday to tell me she had one.
All
Excellent.
They're making me hungry.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, Beth.
There's always that lag to get to the unmute button. I'm Beth Latta. I work for IT Solutions. They're based in Philly, but I work remotely from my home office in Pittsburgh. Let's see, I've been doing this for 31 years, and strawberry is my all-time favorite, but I have to say I do like the mint ones in March.
All right, excellent. Beverly.
Hi, I'm in Kentucky, if you didn't hear that earlier. But I've lived in Michigan and California and Texas and kind of all over. And my first FileMaker was before Claris bought it. So that's a long time ago. I'm trying to retire right now, so I'm still working, but I would like to ease out of it and maybe do more writing again. But my favorite shake is probably the strawberry also, but I do like the mint chocolate from Arby's.
Very good. Tony.
FileMaker 2. Milkshake. Smoothie, close enough, I hope. I actually made a video about how to make a healthy smoothie. Good news is I don't have it. I can't find it. But I would say soaked almonds is a nice ingredient for that, and bananas and some chocolate, and maybe some other superfood, something like that. FileMaker 2. That's me out of New York.
All right, very good. Chris.
There we go. Sorry about that. I've been using FileMaker about 30 years. Once upon a time, I was a sales engineer at Claris back in the day, based out of Chicago, and I'm in Michigan now. And my favorite shake, there used to be this little hole in the wall kind of Dairy Queen wannabe place in Chicago called Tasty Freeze or something like that, with horrible soft serve ice cream. But boy, they had good butterscotch shakes. I think it was like a butterscotch malted shake. It was clearly poison, but boy, did I love it. And then you can hardly go wrong with an eggnog shake. So I would maybe have a tie there.
All right, very good. Cheryl. Cheryl had to step away. How about Teresa? Is that you on the other side of the Profile Developers logo, or is Thomas there now too? Oops, I guess I'm 0 for 2. How about Laura? Somehow I missed you, so we'll get back up to Laura.
Okay. Yep. I'm Laura. I'm developer across IT since about version 9. And I would say that I'm not a huge fan of milkshakes. I'd rather do smoothies or floats. So.
What's it? I am Todd Weller with Cross. FileMaker 6, I guess, is when I got started. Very partial to banana milkshakes and also hot fudge milkshakes because it's just a little bit different from just straight chocolate. So I like that. So I guess Teresa, you have a
Hello. So we're doing how long we've been working in FileMaker. I've been working since 8.5, so I think since 2007. And then favorite milkshake. I haven't had a milkshake in forever. Probably like a chocolate peanut butter, something along those lines. Not very original, but gets the job done.
that it does. All right. And then I guess Scott, if you want to take over, you can introduce yourself and then you can just go ahead and dive right in.
Okay. Is anyone else presenting?
No, not until we'll do our, if anybody has one more thing there at the end, but the floor is yours for 45 minutes or an hour, however long you want to, whatever it takes to cover what you have to share with us.
Yeah, we'll play that by ear. My name is Scott Koontz. I have been to some of the Pittsburgh meetings. It's been a while. And I did work for Vince Lackner for a while, but that was back in 2000. And I don't think Vince has probably been here in your group for a while. I've been using FileMaker since version 2. My first program I ever wrote of real consequence is actually still running. As embarrassing as it appears today, it's been converted many times, still running. I'm in Johnstown, PA, and I do a lot of engineering and math work. What I'm going to show you today is going to be in the wine and spirit industry. And I'm going to go with root beer float, not a shake, but I got to have a root beer float. So let me make sure. Okay, for share screen, do I do desktop? Is that everything?
Correct. Yeah, the desktop should share everything unless you want to just share a window.
Okay, I'm going to do desktop. And then is my desktop being shared? Oh, never mind. Now it's being shared, right?
Yes, I
We're
can
good.
see
All
it.
right. Okay. First of all, I promise you there are not a lot of slides. I just want to make sure you see this because if I, depending on the time, I don't know this group well. I don't know if what I'm about to show you, most of you will have seen, I'm assuming, and most of you will have done it. But if there's anything you want me to slow down in, just let me know. But I do want to go through these quickly to introduce what I'm looking at. My goals for this project, this is wine and spirit industry, is the competition that I have with this program has a horrible interface. It's difficult to use. You actually need a degree in this program, my competitor, to work with it. So my goal was to say, can I give them one screen and do everything? And you'll see what I'm talking about soon enough. For example, searches are easy in FileMaker, but I decided that I'm going to hold their hand through all the searches. And I will show you how this works if you want. I hope I have enough of this down. I can get to it quickly to demonstrate why we have these searches and how, the purpose. User selected sub summaries up to 3. There are going to be 3 groupings that this industry wants to do. User defined products or store groups. If time permits, this is a neat trick. This was extremely powerful for this product, and it's easier to show than explain. When they run this, they want their results in bottles, cases, dollars. We also allowed them to change the column order. And for the most part, everything you see that I run is going to end up on one layout. And that's for reasons of not wanting to complicate the program with tons of layouts. Here are the example questions we're going to answer. I hope you guys don't mind that it's alcohol, but number 1, I'm going to show you a simple search and one summary. This is going to be easy enough. But very quickly, we're going to get into simple searches and multiple summaries. Now, we're all used to doing that with sub-summaries, but I'm going to show you how we can make this work with, any choice by the user. I'm also going to make sure that when they perform a search, it handles all the ands and ors for them. And this is the part that might take some time to explain, and I'll base this on, if anyone wants me to stop and explain something, I'm in no hurry to get to this, but it is a neat trick. Okay, so this was the question that I've been working on this program for quite some time, and this was the original question. And what you're about to see is basically handled, with three primary tables. There's a whole bunch, like anything else in FileMaker, in the background, and all of the reports are coming out of the one table. We're sitting on 700 million rows of sales data. So there's a lot of data behind the scenes. And so not only did this have to work, it had to work quickly. So we've got a huge file we're actually running this on a Mac Mini, and it's fine. It does a great job. If time permits, I'll jump to something like this, and that depends on what, you guys may see this and say, yeah, we've seen it before, press on, or you may see what I'm doing here with the universal reporting and want me to stay put.
Scott, is your data coming from cash register receipts, or where are you capturing this?
This data is this is called control state data. So Pennsylvania there are 17 states that are control states. Technically, the data comes from the state. So it's every store, wine and spirit store, and every private store's sales of wine and spirit. Okay, so what ends up happening is, let me see what we got in here. And we got this every once in a while, but here's our primary table. It's got, at the moment, 647 million rows in it.
Wow.
But I got to say, FileMaker handles it well. We have no problem with this database, nor have we for 20 years. So I'm going to dive right in.
And Scott, this is Jill. In what sense does that data come from the state? You just said it was state stores plus private stores, which I'm not sure we have in Pennsylvania. But how is that state data?
Well, technically, it's not the state's data. The reason you can get this data is because it's the people's data.
And do they report it? Does every liquor sale have to get reported to the state?
Yes.
And you get it from them? Okay, got it.
Yeah. Now, technically, I don't get it from the state, and that's another 1 hour discussion. It involves attorneys. And if you ask the state for this data, they will say they don't have it. And then when you press them, they'll say, okay, we have it, but tell me what you want. And when you tell them exactly what you want, they say, you need to go to this other company and pay, I think it's $1,700 a month. And that's Pennsylvania alone. Okay, so there is an 800-pound gorilla that runs this industry. So my data comes from the state, but it comes indirectly from the state. So I get this from my clients. So
well, having had just a few dealings with Pennsylvania in the 40 years I've lived here, I did wonder how you got it from the state, because getting things from the state is not necessarily trivial. Thank you.
No, yeah, the state will fight this. If you want to do me a favor, go ahead and see if you can get it. But anyone in this meeting, if you could get the data, that would be amazing. But I don't pay for it. This is my client's data. But all right.
So Scott, Tim here. I'm from Columbus, Ohio area. Is Ohio one of them ones that you can get this data from?
Yes. Here's Ohio. Now I know there's some duplication, but Ohio's one of them. Alabama, Iowa, etc. There's a reason there's two versions of Pennsylvania and two of North Carolina, but Essentially, there's about 17 of these. Okay, so I'm going to show you the simplest of reports. And I'm going to prep this real quick. Okay, I'm going to show you everything sold in Pennsylvania in the past 12 months, the top sellers in the past 12 months. And now, granted, I am sitting in the office. The servers are in our basement. So this will run really fast. In most connections, what I'm about to show you takes about 8 seconds. And I bring that up because there are a lot of tricks in the background that make this work. And let me give you a quick, I'm going to jump to a slide that I, every month I get 1.4 million rows from Pennsylvania. What I'm about to run would take 17 million rows to run if you didn't put tricks in here. So this is not 17 million that I'm going to show you, but all the data is sitting there waiting in case you need it. So I'm going to click view. On the bottom left here, I have a view button. And this should only take a few seconds, and I'm going to show you the top spirits in Pennsylvania. Now, they're going to be by size. That's interesting that, okay. All right, can everyone see the results? All right. This is an example of a simple search. There's no or. This is also an example of one level of sub-summary. And that sub-summary on this layout, I'm going to jump around a little bit, is a sub-summary by a group ID. This is not sub-summary by product at the moment. And this is simply, the next one's a sub-summary by another group ID. These are all dynamic. And I'll show you that in a second. But what that allows us to do is take this same report and group it twice. And the user, if you look on the left-hand side, these are the groups they can pick from. And I'm going to run another one that'll give a clearer picture about what's being sold in Pennsylvania. Now, this is technically the same data. It's just sorted differently. So this should make sense to everybody. All right. Does everyone see Tito's at the top? Okay. So what's happening is Tito's is 5.7% of Pennsylvania sales in 9-liter cases. And Captain Morgan Orange Spice is 2.8. You see I have a running percent running down this side. And that's based on rolling 12 sales. And you can see that I've got one sub-summary, two sub-summaries, okay? But what's nice about what we're doing here is you could do it as many times, in this case, up to 3 as you want. So this will be the top vendor in Pennsylvania, which won't have any meaning to you guys, followed by their top product, followed, et cetera. So I won't belabor this as much as just run this one more time. Our grand totals on this report have always been the same. This is all of Pennsylvania, 7 million in the past 12 months, 7,236,000 cases of alcohol. Diageo being the #1 vendor. Okay. So this is, we only do 3 tiers. If you do any more, it gets ridiculous.
Who's Diageo or what?
I'm sorry.
Who's Diageo? I never heard of it.
It's a vendor. Sometimes when you buy products, the vendor that actually brought the item to the shelf, generally these companies aren't known to people.
Okay, so I still get things from a state store on some street, but some vendor like Diageo brought the bottles there.
Well, these vendors, you're going to recognize some of them. Moet Hennessy will be there.
Okay.
Some of the vendors you're going to recognize. Here's an example of just the vendors where I bring everything back together into one. I'm not going to show any detail. And in a second, Diageo, Sazerac, Beam Suntory, these are the vendors.
Okay, Bacardi. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So that particular search is a single row search. I did Pennsylvania, that just happens to be for faster search. That's a number for the year and month. I did spirits only. And that particular search was pretty simple. What happens then if I went Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and I'm interested only in imported scotches, and I'm interested in, and I'm just making this up, rum from the Virgin Islands, and I would like them to be, only the 750s and the 15s. If you were to do this in FileMaker manually, how many searches do you have to do? And the answer to this one is 8, because you got 2 states, 2 classifications, and 2 sizes. And we decided that asking our clients to do this was like just not worth it, right? So this particular search, if you were to do it by hand, would end up looking like this. Pennsylvania, I'm sticking to 1 month, all spirits. These classifications, and that represents, of course, the Scotch and the rum, and then these sizes. Okay.
So
and again, I'll circle.
That's
I'm
just
sorry,
a dummy of how you would do the search, but that's not how you're doing it.
I'm sorry, say that again.
That's it. You're dummying up how the search runs, or this is actually what's doing it.
Oh, this is the search.
Okay. And
yeah, I just held the shift key so I could show you what it was doing.
Okay.
All right.
And I want to know how you're doing it so fast. I guess that's the next question.
Oh, you mean how the searches are coming in?
I want to know how you tweak and tune this for performance.
Oh, okay. And I will spend some time on that as well. For the searches, by the way, does everyone know how that's happening? In a few words, do you know how that's working?
You're building that with a script.
It's the script. They are nested loops. And they are many nested loops. And I'm going to show you. Okay, here's one of them. What happens is there's a state loop, followed by a class loop, followed by a vendor loop, a broker loop, a size loop. These are just nested loops. Okay, so it knows, and there's a lot of other logic in here we can ignore, but essentially all it does is say, how many states do you have? And the state loop sets a variable to 1 and says, how many times do I have to do this? And every time we add another parameter, it gets deeper. And we end up with some pretty strange stuff inside here, but our innermost loop is here. So FileMaker crunches these better than you'd think. Sitting in the background of this is, 650 million rows. And I want you to watch this. I'm going to time this. That particular search I'm doing right now, takes longer than before. And partially because we have to put equal signs in the sizes. But it doesn't take as long as you'd think. All right, so about 10 seconds to do the search. And now it's just doing the sort. Okay, this is, let me move this out of the way here, just so we can see this better. So this happens to be Scotch, rum, see up on top. I don't know if you can you see my cursor when we share my screen? Does my cursor show? Okay. So Scotch, rum, 750, 175, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, et cetera. And even these columns are dynamic where I could click on year to date, I could click here and change the column of interest. But again, that was a search that was done, I could pick as many states as I want. I can pick as many of these as I want. And I can pick as many of any of these I want. Okay, so the nested loop performs the search. These over here, they're done with, let's see. this determines what goes in, when you group, this is the group. When I said that I wanted the product and size, there's a reason for these two, but look at this row. That's what goes into product and size.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the class is a class number, et cetera. Vendor is a vendor number. So you've probably seen this. I would assume, and I could be assuming wrong, that most people have seen this before, where there's no possible way you could design enough layouts to do this without doing it like this or something similar. Any questions on this?
You know who I think did something like this with some very slick layouts that represented it for the user was Vince Lackner, with all the different categories he had to have for all the different estate laws in different states.
No.
Because the search problem, I think, this is going back a few years and my mind isn't what it once was, but he had to be able to tailor what requirements were needed in what states. And when a user put in a state or a state plus a couple of other requirements, he set up the search, but he also used a layout that was basically a grid where all the labels would change. I'm sorry. It was a very clever Vince Lackner and display that switched with what he was searching for.
If this was the year 2000 and you're looking at the developer, if it was after, then that would have been someone in Vince's company.
Okay, I would
it's
guess it was.
possible.
No, it would have been after that because I wasn't.
After that,
I wasn't
okay.
coming to these meetings in 2000.
So here's a major trick that's kind of cool. We have something called product lists, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new product list, and I'm going to call this now this is a good bit of work, but here's every product in Pennsylvania. Every single product that you can get in Pennsylvania. And if I wanted to make sure, I'm going to show you real quick why I'm going to do this is, let's see, SCT, there's some weird abbreviations. All right, I'm going to pick some scotches here in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to pick these three. All right, I'm going to also make sure that I get a Balvenie scotch in here. I'm going to pick these two. So what I've done so far, I picked 8 scotches. And I'm going to set these 8 scotches. And this is now mine. I can share this with other people. These scotches represent whatever I want them to mean. These could be my competitors. These could be my favorites. Those are my favorite scotches. I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to say, I want to pit these scotches against, and I'm not going to build this, but I'm going to say, I want to know what's selling in these stores. But I may want to pick these stores. I may want to leave this open-ended, but I can pick a group of stores. Right now, what I can run is a report, and I'm going to ignore some of these over here. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to say, I just want to run these 8 scotches. Now, when I run this report, here's a pop quiz. How many searches does it have to do?
Lots.
And it's not 8. The answer is 1. If I were to do these stores together with the scotches, oh, here's a FileMaker Pro on locations. Okay. If I have 8 scotches picked, and I have 149 locations, how many searches does FileMaker have to do? In this case, the answer is still 1. And there's a reason for that. It's a little bit tricky, but watch how, this does a pretty good group. I did those scotches and it's done already. And that's pulling from, 650 million rows. And the way we had to do this was a bit crazy. What you cannot do is the loop. What you can't do is say 8 scotches, 129 stores. You could do that in FileMaker, but it will take forever. Combinatorically, you'd take 8 times 149 and you'd end up with 1,000 searches. This did one search, and I believe what I can show you, oh, it's not on here, sorry. The field I wanted to see is not on here. What it ends up doing is it does a search from the sales file and it digs through this and then also finds all the items that are in here. But there's a trick that makes it run faster that doesn't make any sense until, there's not enough time here to show you. But what we decided not to do a long time ago was we could not do a search that said, 149 rows times 8 rows is not going to work. Okay, this particular, I'm going to go ahead and run this one. This will be those scotches, those locations. And now you see we have a database that says, what they end up doing. There's the results, Dewar's white label, 28. And if you want, I can show you the stores. Oops. The scotches and the stores from my list. And because it's the same report, all I'm going to do is resort it. And this will be the expanded view. So the beauty of this also is these are transferable. I can take this and share it with other users. And if I'm in the, depending on the company, some companies have 50 users, some have 3. They just check a box. And what happens is I come back in here and it starts showing up, this wild turkey isn't mine, somebody else made it. And the reason they do that then is to make sure that they could, share their sales territories, for example, would be done there. So we also changed the units if we want. I've been working with 9-liter cases. I can switch everything to dollars, bottles, number of stores. This is all done. All I've shown you so far are 2 screens, a reporting screen, a user entry screen, reporting screen. That's it. Any questions here?
So I got a question. The very first thing that you showed is, as you said, 8, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. I'm imagining that and the looping script construct that you had builds a stacked find, what I would call a stacked find, with like if you were to pause before performing find, you'd have a found record count of 8.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a single find.
Yeah, we did not employ, there are very rare cases where we will employ anything like a new request and omit or, append. All we're doing is ands and ors. And yes, the one that I showed where I stacked them up was 8. That's where I did Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and 2 different classifications, 2 sizes. That was 8.
And then and that was cool and it was very fast. And at first I heard you say 700 million. I thought you had misspoken because that's a lot of records. I thought you had just been off by, so that's very cool. And the fancier thing where you had the 2 things and you said it's just one find, that's the one where it's, you did some magical thing. It sounded like you searched on one of the parent tables and GTR'd over, or
no,
what magic?
If you want, sure. Let me show you one thing beforehand. I'm going to show you one item that we're kind of proud of. And I'll get right to that. Notice I don't have a check mark here by 375s, but I do have a highlight. And what's nice about this is that you can highlight any row, whether you select it or not. I'm running a report where the 375s are highlighted, okay? So if, for example, I were to highlight 750s and I were to do scotches, and there is a reason I'm doing this to make the demo faster. I'm going to show you Excel, okay? But I'm also going to do this, I'm going to show you a nice Excel version of this. For some reason, okay, everyone sees 750s are highlighted, right? And
Yep.
we have this Excel thing, and this is a little bit odd, but I'm going to have to open Excel ahead of time. This is something that I may document if the group wants to see this. It took a good bit of work to make, but I'm going to save FMP user group in my documents folder. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button. And this takes a little while to create, but what you end up with is an Excel spreadsheet that looks like what you see on your screen. Indents will be there, bold will be there, highlights will be there.
That XSLT?
What's that?
Did you do XSLT or AppleScript? Probably not AppleScript.
No, no. So let's see. What was that called? Darn it. FMP user group. Okay. This file ends up as HTML for a reason. Great. I got to move stuff around on my screen. Give me a second. I guess I should have done that the other way. Okay. This file, if you open with Excel, there's Excel.
Wow.
Now, that one I did a couple years ago, and it involves spitting the data out and then crunching it with the most bare basic Excel markers that determines, row color, indents, bold, and so on. But that's the whole report. And for some reason, the wine and spirit industry likes Excel a bit too much. And so we did it. I hate it because now they can come in. Now, by the way, we didn't put calculations in. We could, but these numbers that you see here are just numbers. We didn't want to put actual calculations in. We just said, look, we're going to give you, whatever you're looking at is calculated.
But you got it as HTML and Excel opens it. Is that correct, Scott?
Well, yes. Okay. The reason is if we put XLS or XLSX, Excel wouldn't open it because technically it's not an Excel file. So you have to literally open Excel and then open the file and then it'll open it. So it's not perfect, not yet. But we don't know how to create a file that Excel says this is Excel. There's a lot of work behind it.
Yeah, it is.
What's
But
that?
Yeah, there is, but it opens up HTML tables just fine.
Yes, and technically it's not even HTML. That's the other weird thing is this, if I open it with like BB Edit, we had to craft we had to craft this with a whole bunch of scripts that spit it out. And yeah, I guess for the most part, it's readable as HTML.
Right.
And we put our own formats in. We had to go to several websites to find out how to do this. How
Right.
do you make red? And there's a number format for red and so on. So, you could see here's, Johnny Walker's right here. So yeah, this is an HTML file for the most part.
But it's got But it's got the Excel styling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, back to this. There was a question on how is this search happening? And let me see if I can find this. Now, this is a mess, so close your eyes. What's happening is your subset of products is only going to a special file that the search says that the data key that you're on in the huge table has to match a product key in this subset products find. I wish I'd written this down because I'm saying this out loud and it's not going to make sense. The way the search works is almost like searching on a portal for the products, for the product ID that you want. This is the relationship, it's not the search. But if you were in the data table that's huge, 700 million rows, and you did a search for the number each product set has its own ID number, which might be sitting over here to the right. Okay. This number, this 24457, exists on every one of these rows. This isn't something the user sees. Do you see the 24457? And what we do with that relationship is say, find 24457 in this other file. And what happens is you end up searching, even if that product is found in another subset, it still works. And this is where I'd have to write this up. The search is different than what you view. So the search ends up being this simple. That's why there's two. There's a find, but you can't just use a, oops. Give me a second. I'm having trouble because I have things covering my screen. The label itself has to know that you're using just that set. Otherwise, you're going to get the name of another subset. And I know what I just said probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but the search ends up being fast. We started this out and the searches were too slow to use. If we made the assumption that we wanted all the products in that set, and we ended up doing this trick where we thought this will never work on millions of records. And as it turns out, on paper, this doesn't look like it should work. In reality, it works and it works really fast. So we have people that come in here, this has 10,000 products in it. So I have a client that wanted to know all the new products that were added in the past year, and I made him a list of 10,000 products. This works. This works even if you're, a web browser. This works if you're, sitting and working off your phone. It's the strangest thing, but it works quickly. And not only do we end up with these products, but you can do something where you say, I want to report of Ardbeg and I want to report of Belvedere, but even these become groupable. So that becomes a product list and then product size. This becomes a group. This becomes its own group name so that you're not just getting a result. Let me see, this will probably run with reasonable time. So this is crazy how fast this runs. So I even was able to make a product list grouping, and there's Belvedere, there's Ardbeg. And one more crazy thing we added was include others. And the way that works is, if I want to run this and I want to see Ardbeg group, the groups I put in, you're going to see a third group. Oh, great. I'll let it run. This is one of the sorts that takes longer because of relationships. But while this is running, there was a question about how we get 700 million rows to run quickly. The trick is 80% of everything people run are only products. That's it. They don't run product store combos. So what we do ahead of time is we use SQL and we crunch the data into 3 parts. products only, stores only, and then stores and products together. 95.
So you have like a nightly script that condenses that.
No, when the data comes in, we run, this is kind of neat. We run FileMaker Pro to create the SQL. The SQL crunches the data, then the data is imported into FileMaker. And this data comes in only once a month. So Pennsylvania, for example, right now, Michigan is in, it just came in. And I have to take Michigan data that we get as off an FTP site, and we create a whole bunch of separate files using SQL. FileMaker can't do it fast enough. We couldn't in a month run all the.
I see where you're going. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we end up with something called a SQL generator. So we ended up writing, where did that go? Sorry, did something wrong. I either quit something. Oh yeah, nice. Okay. All right. We ended up writing a FileMaker file because we're not great at SQL. And whenever the state, we don't have to set the state, but this particular data, this is crunched by SQL. And then when we're done with SQL, it sits on a server and FileMaker server picks it up. But we don't run any crons, if that's what you're asking. We don't, we're not running anything overnight. We actually babysit the import. And
yeah, if you're doing them only once a month, I mean, that's a great approach. I like what you've done.
Yeah, it works well. And here's what ends up happening is in our data table, whenever I'm just going to take you to one of these. Let me see which one I want. Okay, whenever the data comes in, and by the way, when you work with millions of records, the first time you come to this table, there's a lag time. So I'm going to show you Pennsylvania's records. Let me do 2021, first month. Oops. Well, here's Pennsylvania. I now have 4 million records in Pennsylvania for January. And here's why it's fast. Number one, this is static data. So we are already taking care of rolling 12. See this bottles rolling 12? These numbers don't change. So we don't have to add 12 numbers to get a rolling 12 number. We already have the number. Another reason it's fast, we have something called a row type. Notice in FileMaker how fast these indices are, or indexes. These are amazingly fast. Now row type, here's Pennsylvania 3 million rows that I brought in. I'm going to do a refine and I'm going to put a C in here. 27,000. Most of the reports I ran are based on 27,000 rows for Pennsylvania. That's it. And in FileMaker terms, that's nothing. And the reason we can do that is every time a report runs, we have FileMaker determine for us. We have FileMaker determine, in this case, I'll show you something. If I run this report, the simplest of reports, and I do product size, you're going to see that in the search that it did, there's a row type of C. It knows I'm only dealing with products. There's nothing in here in my search that has anything to do with a store. The minute I come in here and say, I want Allegheny County, there's no way to do this without jumping into the big stuff. So if I were to run this, you're going to see another row type pop up. So we have an advantage because the data is static. So 9 out of 10 reports are run on 5% of the data. And the only time it gets big is when you start running a combination of products and stores. What I don't want to see people do is this. I can run this report and it's going to be about 10,000 pages long. And I'm not kidding about that. I'm not going to run it. And another thing we've done for our client is whenever they're done with a report and they say, I need this every month, what they do is they click this, and when we import the data, the server runs the report and sends them an email. So, so we don't have to babysit that. It just churns out anywhere from 50 to 100 reports. When Pennsylvania comes in, as an example, I can like when West Virginia data comes in, I know that there are going to be 86 reports going out the door. And these reports simply go to the users that created them. And so Walter here is running this report, and it's pretty complex. But he lets it go because next month, this changes to 2021-02, runs the report, spits it out to him. So some of these reports take a long time to run. Something to note, the new feature on FileMaker server where it'll do the sorting for you if the server is not busy. You guys familiar with that? Won't work here. And the reason is that my sorts are based on special fields for sub-summaries that include global variables, and it's simply not enough information to give to the server. So it's unfortunate, but the bonus is if you run this on a web browser, it works really fast. So a sort that takes a long time in FileMaker on this program is about 10 times faster on a web browser. So, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. Is there anything else you guys want to see on this?
Scott, I have a question. This is Daniel Shanahan. You talked about, you passed over a little bit that you package things up in SQL. It's too slow for FileMaker and you let SQL do the work. But I'm not clear on what that means. Does that mean you write the SQL and then send it off to a SQL Server or Postgres or MySQL? What does that mean?
SQLite. Here's what we end up doing. Yeah, it's really fast. So here's what we end up doing. We have the data. I'll go to Pennsylvania. So here's Pennsylvania's SQL database. It's 11 gigs. Yep. There's a lot of data sitting here in SQL. We let FileMaker create this. Okay. I don't have time to create this. I let FileMaker do it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, could FileMaker crunch this data? The answer is yes. We tried it 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and we ran overnight and it wasn't done. This handles most states anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. And what it does is it creates a whole bunch of files for us. And those files end up in the document folder. Here are the files that SQL created. Okay. So as a result, we end up with, for example, these state summaries. This state summary is, you're looking at, 20 million records crunched into one screen.
And so you're bringing in that text data.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I like it. It's great.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it works well. It's the only way this would work. Like when we decided, I've actually been working in the wine and spirit industry for 25 years. Years ago, we used to, people had to FTP the program to their computer to run it. The server just wasn't handling it. But we decided that to crunch these numbers, the only way to do it was FileMaker creates SQL. SQL crunches the raw data we're given into usable chunks. And those usable chunks are as small as these summaries. I mean, these summaries, I can say, give me all the, this is really interesting, on-premises, you're gonna see it all turn red. COVID, everything's red. But these numbers are instant because they're single numbers, they're single rows.
So that's how you make it fast, is by never hitting those 700 million records. You hit the summaries instead.
Yes,
where you can.
Yeah. These would be impossible to do otherwise. And this is one of our servers. And this is quite simply, you can see Mississippi ends up with all these files. Some of these end up going to a client. We have a custom software for a client that said, we like what you did, but here's what we want. So, but for the most part, these then get sucked into FileMaker, and you're going to see some of these files are 1K in size. All right. Some of these files are going to be 68 megs in size, but they're exactly what we need in FileMaker, no more, no less. Plus the fact that we did take these, oh wait, I'll just show you this. Great. Pressing keys too fast. This data table and here's the overhead, by the way. That spinning beach ball is simply because to open a table of that size takes a while. So what happens in this table is, and this is why we have to crunch the data, they give us monthly data. We create rolling 12 this year and last year. They're all sitting in the same row. That's why we cut our file size down by saying products only, and then we said divide by 24. There are 24 rows that are needed to do rolling 12 this year, rolling 12 last year. So we crunch them because it's static data. They're not going to change. So we have the bottle sizes. We break a lot of programming rules. You know, you would never do this normally. Put actual cases, bottles, right? Dollars. You would never do this if you were writing this from scratch. But what happens is, if I didn't do this, I'd end up with 700 million rows times 50. I mean, that's just not going to happen. We needed these to run quickly. So what happens when somebody wants to see actual current month last year against bottles current month last year, against dollar current month last year, we've got it all sitting in one row. So we break rules. We break a lot of rules. That's the only way this would work ever. So does anyone want me to send them to that Excel thing? Would you want me to send to the group as an example, you know, how we did that? Or
Sure.
If there's any one thing you want me to like write up and send to the group, happy to do that.
Scott, what was that case statement that you mentioned a while back, and you said that there was something unique about that?
I'm sorry,
there was a case statement that you said that was unique about. This was a while back.
Would it be working with product groupings?
Used a case when you were building the search criteria, I think. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, the search uses nested loops. There might have been.
You were talking nested loops, but then you showed a case statement when you said something. It was.
It's possible. Was it this?
Yep.
Okay.
So what was it with the G group 1? You're just saying a lot of.
Okay.
Stuff in there?
These G group 1 come from. Wrong screen here. What's happening here is we are sorting always on the same. It's always the same sort. So I'm going to come back here and I'll show you exactly what's happening there. When I run a product size report, or I'll make this fast, West Virginia. Okay, when I run this, the sub summary is by group 1. Is only one grouping, and it's group 1. So when this comes up, I'll show you two things. One is the layout is sub summary by group ID. That's the sort always, end of story. Okay. The sort in this case is group ID reordered by column 1. So it doesn't matter what the user picks as their grouping, in this case, product and size. It sorts by group ID. That's how I get away with one layout. So all I have here is subsummary by group ID. And all I have here is group text, which determines what, what goes in there. It's got to read properly. So if, for example, I were to sort this by year to date, instead of rolling 12, the sort simply switched to another column here. That's all, but it's still grouping by group ID.
Okay, I see.
And of course, that gets extended. If I do common code and product size, it simply knows this is a little bit of work in a script that says how many of these you're using. This is nested sorting. And in this case, this is the sort. Does that make sense? So it's group ID, column 1, group 2 ID, column 1, and that's how you end up with a breakout between Smirnoff 80 and then all its sizes.
Okay, thanks.
So I figure people have done something like this before. This is what allows me this entire time we've been on one screen. Well, 2 screens. This one and the report. That's it. And that was our goal for the wine and spirit industry, so that they, it's a little hard to get used to this at first. There's a lot going on. And that's one reason why we had to put colors on here. We just leave it on because even though it looks clownish, it's like we have to tell people, go to the blue area. Now click this. There was no better way to get them to where they needed to be. So we do have other layouts. There are other ways to view this data. Well beyond what, I realize it's 8 already. My apologies. So anyway, if anyone wanted more detail on this, make sure that, you guys feel free to go ahead and email me if you want to see any detail on how this works. Willing to share some of these secrets. As long as you don't work in the wine and spirit industry and don't compete with me, go ahead.
All right, very good. Any other questions for Scott?
There's some questions in the chat.
I'm sorry?
Daniel and I were both curious about how exactly you're handing this off to SQLite to do your sort of pre-chewing the food, as it were. Are you just using whatever native SQLite just happens to be sitting on a Mac, or are you sort of setting up a specific deployment configuration to optimize how that works? Or
I'll show you if you want to see it.
Sure.
Here's Pennsylvania. Here I just call up a terminal window, and all I'm doing is this. Here I'm going to plop in Pennsylvania. And this, okay, has just 3 tables that we get from FTP site. And these are huge. But what we end up doing is a read statement. And what we read into here are these 2 files. Here's the first one. This file turns a timer on. We get to watch how long everything takes. We completely gut the stores and products, our separators of pipe. We then import 3 files. And the reason we use FileMaker to create this SQL, I'm going to open this up. There's just too much going on here. I don't know how to write this in SQL. If someone's really good at SQL, they could have written something that precedes this. We wrote something in FileMaker that makes what you're looking at here. When we're done with this, we save it into the right folder. So FileMaker knows where to save these files. Okay. And you can see down here, there's imports from previous months. And the only thing that changes, I don't know how easy you can see this, but it just keeps changing the month it brings in and the groupings that it does. When it's running those, it creates these files. And then these are just raw data files that we then import into FileMaker. So FileMaker makes SQL, SQL makes raw data gets brought into FileMaker. We never totally automated it because if anything goes wrong, you don't want to be messing with importing millions of records and then say, oops. We learned that the hard way. You know, the first time you have an oops, now you have to delete records. Importing into FileMaker at 700 million rows, not bad. 1,300 records a minute. So not too bad.
Don't delete, go for your backup and
Yes,
re-import the right
delete.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to delete 4 million records. You can, you just do it overnight. But
Couldn't
yeah.
you just do a drop table, or can you not drop the whole thing?
Oh, you can't.
Or
No,
a
this
truncate
is
table,
building
sorry.
the 700 million. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we're just tagging on to the end of the 700 million.
I
So
see.
there's nothing to drop. No. And we've been very fortunate. We're running this on a Mac Mini loaded, and those 2 gig drives, 2 terabyte drives are amazing. Anxious to see this running on an M1. We have never had a problem. We have an extra mini sitting around in case anything happens. 20 years later, we've never had a problem. So we've been lucky is part of it.
And,
much-
the, and this,
Go ahead,
Scott,
Daniel.
the terminal part, so that's all a manual part too. When you create that file out of FileMaker, it goes into the right folder. But when you need to engage SQLite, that's a manual process where you have to open up the terminal, or do you have a cron job that does that?
No, we don't have a cron job because when we get the data, it's possible, we have to eyeball it. And there's a reason for that, because the data comes in, the raw data comes in, we unzip it. And there have been times when these are wrong. And
Yeah.
we can automate that. We could say, go ahead and run the entire process when the data's in. We tried that. We got it down to almost total automation, but we'd rather babysit it. As annoying as that is, we'd rather babysit.
When you feed your largest files to SQLite, does that spike your RAM usage, or how resource intensive is that process?
It's not too bad. I wish I had one to run. Does anyone mind? Do you want to see this process? I can show it to you.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
And the only reason I know data came in from Michigan, and so we end up with this FTP site, and this is where the raw data sits. So we save the file, and we just got so used to using this so that you're going to see me fly through this. And what we do is, I know I'm downloading Michigan, so I drop this into the right place. And we come in here to the data folder. And did that not download?
It's still downloading. See the little pie above
Yeah,
it?
I must have well, then they're having a problem on their server, because that should never happen.
Yeah, I see the little progress bar on Firefox.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. Huh.
Oh, Scott, while we're waiting on the download, I think I have a quick question for like your sorting groups. Like you have like the 3 groups that they have an option to choose from. Do you have to put anything in there so that they don't, pick them in the wrong, is there like bad combinations that you've had to guard against, or is it robust enough that they can kind of group it however they want?
We are under the user beware. We've seen that before. Well, they'll do this and they'll do vendor. We tried, limiting, and here's what happened right away. Somebody called us and said, I can't run the report I want to run. And we said, what are you doing? Vendor and product then vendor. We said, why? They said, we have our reasons. So, and I'm like, okay. But for the most part, people aren't, this is really crazy, by the way. Of all the times.
You're almost there.
Is it almost done?
Yeah, it looks like it's just about finished.
That's, I mean, normally these take about 2 seconds. I'm wondering if we're having, oh, you know what? We're on a fiber line and there's a problem today, a huge problem with the fiber into our town.
There
Yeah,
you go. Zip just finished.
we're on gigabit Ethernet, and that's not gigabit Ethernet. Okay, here's what we do. I unzip Michigan because this is what they're given to us. Okay, and then what I do is, all right, I do, and we're going to do Michigan. And I make sure I'm on the right tables, and I do this. And I'm going to read one of the files that FileMaker created. And when I do this, now Michigan happens to be huge. We don't have a choice because that's the new one in. But you're going to see it's going to start crunching these, and it'll tell me how long each one takes.
Can you turn on your activity monitor?
Oh yeah, one of the cores will be pegged. One of the CPUs, SQLite should peg this. And I guess somebody else is on the server too, because that's not me. So there's SQLite, and I don't know why it's at 50%, but normally it's going to go much higher. And these are being written to the right location. We also have these going here. So as it gets the files completed, I'm going to go back to our terminal. All right, so it brought the data in. It's showing me what came in. Let me get rid of some of this stuff. These are every month. These are months showing up to make sure that we have the right number of data. We can get bad data, and we'd know it if this last row's number was out of whack. Okay. That number is kind of low, but it's okay. So now
what out of whack looks like.
Out of whack would be like last month we brought in 10 million rows or whatever. This month we brought in 2 million. So here's a text file that it's creating. Here's the first file it's creating, and it's putting it in the document folder into for FileMaker to pick up. This is FileMaker's document folder. So I wish a small state had come in, but this one will probably take about 60 seconds to create this first file. And the first file it creates are the products, just the raw products that need to go into Michigan. And Michigan's crunching takes about an hour. So we're not going to watch the whole thing unless you guys want to stick around.
So do they drink a lot in Michigan, or is it because they're your newest state?
Oh, good
or
question.
Smaller bottles, so there are more of them?
Oh, you're any and all of that. Here's what happens. Some states, the states control the wine and the wine and the spirits. So that makes some states bigger. Some states sell a lot of various products in all their stores. And there's no rhyme or reason to this, but it's not necessarily a population. But Michigan has a lot of stores. It's the way they distribute their licenses, and there are many stores sell a lot of products. And Michigan also reports wine and spirits, and so there's just a whole bunch of reasons why. For example, when I come to Michigan, if I want to run Michigan, both premises are given, on and off premise, and wine and spirits are available. But if I come to West Virginia, they don't report on and off premise. They just report how many sales went to each board. So some of these states, West Virginia is nice and small. So here, that took 2 minutes to create this file, which is ready to be brought into FileMaker. And we just wait till they're all done and do one import. So basically, we don't babysit this part. But there's Michigan's product table. This is what it created for us. And
Scott, this is really cool.
It really, yeah, this is really amazing. It's wonderful.
So that is a lot of crunching. And without
Yeah.
SQL, this is not a product in FileMaker. Now, our competitor will run a report. This particular report, as an example, in West Virginia, that I'm going to run, and I'll time it. I know I'm in the office, but the searches, even at home, are really fast. So this will be under 10 seconds. All right, about 7 seconds. That report takes a minute in my competitor's program because they have to calculate all of these numbers. So I don't think they've ever put any of these tricks in. And FileMaker, I just wouldn't be here if I had to write it if I had to write this with proper SQL table structure, this would not work. But anyway, that's.
I would imagine this would not generalize to California, where you can sell liquor in grocery stores and drugstores.
Correct. This California is not a control state. It's an open state, and you cannot get all the data because the data belongs to the vendors. So the vendors can get their own data, but they can't get anyone else's. It's a trade secret. But once you sell to Pennsylvania, it's the people's data, to use the bad phrase, but it's our data, even though they won't give it to you. Yeah, and it's homogenized. The data that I receive is all the same format for every state. So,
interesting.
Yeah,
this is impressive.
I'm curious to know. I don't want to dive too much into your business model, but I'm curious who you sell this to. Is it package stores, or is it distributors, or
brokers and vendors? Yes, some distributors. Sometimes they're the people that make the product, like Edrington, scotches, or sometimes it's, Moet Hennessy, but other times it's companies you've never heard of. So that they would be companies that are brokers. They help sell the product, but they don't make anything. So, for example, this one, this is some crazy stuff. I'll show you this. This is an oddball report, but here's Kettle One, is Remy Martin. And I'm going to look at all stores in Ohio. I'm going to show you something kind of cool that FileMaker does. And we're going to speed this up, but it is pretty fast for the most part. This is going to tell me who's selling Kettle One, who's selling Remy, and who's selling, there are 376 stores in this case, Ohio, that are selling Remy, but not selling Kettle One. But there are 4,000 stores. Oh, I'm sorry?
Is it a web viewer?
No. This is all FileMaker. Yeah, just plenty of tricks. And there are 1,300 stores that both sell. And this is I'm going to pare this down because the reports look weird if I don't, do this. But I can compare just those products and see the numbers flipped. And if I want to know who's stocking Remy, maybe that's my competition. And I want to know who's stocking Remy but not stocking Kettle One. I could click on this 191 and it will now do the same report we had before, but it's going to base it on those 191 products. And you could say, where are they and do I need to be there? So store and common code. Oh, I don't have a lot of products. This looks silly, but these are the stores that are selling Remy VSOP that were not selling Kettle One. So we're converting this to, it was a, obviously, we're going to be going to JavaScript to do that part. It'll run faster. But sometimes this is a little bit slow, but it works like a champ for the most part. And here's what ends up happening. You end up with these huge lists of stores that sell one and a huge list of stores that sells another. And then the program does mostly FileMaker work. There's no web stuff here that determines these, these three, stocks A and B and so on. But that one's, some companies use that, but that's still part of this program. I just didn't want to show it for time purposes.
It's some cool stuff there.
Yes, indeed.
For
Yeah.
sure.
It is okay to denormalize even in SQL. Been doing it for years. Just wanted to say that's great.
Yeah, I just don't think the competitor's denormalizing. I could be wrong, but their program, I wish I could demonstrate it to you because it's good for flashbacks to the 80s and 90s, and it looks terrible. It's like, in my opinion, it's like they handed people bricks and said, build your own house. You can build anything you want in their software, but nobody can build anything because they're handing them bricks. We decided to go modular and say, we're not going to let you run absolutely everything. I think we covered the 80-20 rule pretty well. I mean, there's hardly anything here that you can't do. But their software can do things we can't. The problem with that is very few people are doing those things that we can't do. And if it takes you 30 minutes to run a report, what good is it? Like you're just...
They're running that query that you have. They're probably running it each time. You've done it. You've cached the data of that result. And then you let FileMaker do its thing with that. And that's why it's faster.
Yeah. It took, this was a rewrite about 10 years ago or so, where I hired someone to take over everything I was doing, and I disappeared for a month. And I had to learn more SQL than I knew, and I had to determine, what will work, what is worth my time, how can we get this in here so that, it runs fast and it's flexible. So this part itself, these were not that hard to do. These are easy to do in general. These are tough. But the toughest thing was sitting down and cracking my fingers and saying, what are the logical groupings of data that I can put into this big chunk of data table, which is why I didn't call it sales. It's just data. What can I throw into that and still have it at a reasonable number? We had this almost to 1 billion rows, but we didn't need them. So for bragging rights, someday we'll probably when we get FileMaker server running on an M1 chip, maybe we'll let it run up to 1 billion just to say we have 1 billion rows. But I gotta say, I do have to say, this is just this is running on a Mac Mini, and to be able to come in here and say go and have it give me, in this case, 4 million rows that fast. FileMaker has absolutely no problem with searching and sorting on local fields. I know most of you know that, but this is blazing. I can keep going with this and say, I only want this particular vendor, and boom, and so on. I could say it had to sell something this month, and boom. So this is really fast stuff. So this number, the 647 million, doesn't really matter to FileMaker for local searches, hardly matters at all. What does matter is sorts. Now, if I did this, and I sorted this by bottles, by the way, this is a case where this sort is happening on the server. That's fast. So unfortunately, our sorts will not happen on the server, at least not at this time, because those fields are built. There's too much, the server doesn't know enough info. You can't send that request to the server and say sort by this case statement. And I believe that's the reason it fails. So, but I am impressed. I got to say, every few years when I think should I move away from FileMaker for this product, it takes me about 2 days to say, no, I'm staying put. I don't know if you guys have ever tried, you're just not going to be able to write front ends. I know we're all in the same, preaching to the choir, but I couldn't even hire someone to do what I wanted it to do, in SQL. It just wasn't going to happen.
Hey, Scott, the Mac Mini that you say is performing very well. Mac Mini's got a little trash talk from time to time. You said, is that spinning disk, 2 terabyte spinning disk, or is that SSD?
Oh, it's SSD. Yeah.
Okay, well, that helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot. I'll tell you what, this is what we got going on. And this makes a big difference. The fact that it's 2 terabytes, the bigger the SSD, the faster they are. Besides, we needed the space. It's 200 gigs in size, and it takes, it's probably up to 16 hours to compress. So about twice a year we compress the file. We don't really have to. And this is kind of important here, but the M1 is going to do this potentially, 1.5 up to 2 times faster, but probably 1.5 faster than this.
So Scott, one more thing. I have a Mac Mini. I spun one up over the weekend. As a server, it's kind of, hey, your server's broke, send a taxi, and you put it in a backpack and you're up and running. I've got some Mac Minis with 2 hard drives. Do you ever do that, like 2 drives, so you can put the OS on one, the data on a different? It sounds like you're running fast enough already, but I'm liking the 2 drives.
Yeah, once you get the SSD, all that other stuff goes by the side. For example, to run, what's it called? I haven't even done it for a long time, where you stripe the disks and so on. RAID. That's just not worth the headache. You're just not going to get any faster than this without the headaches. So we never separated. We've had this running on an actual Mac server, the big pizza box servers. And I'll tell you what, our fastest machine to date, this runs faster than our Mac Pros for FileMaker. I mean, it's just, all the stuff I hear online when people talk about you need this. No, you don't. You need 2 Mac Minis. And the only reason we have one, sitting around is in case something goes wrong, we got backups.
How old are your Mac Minis?
What's that?
How old are your Mac Minis? What year?
1-year-old, 2-year-old, and 3-year-old.
Okay.
So, so the backup for this is 2 years old, maybe 3.
Okay.
And we've been running this on a Mini. We ran it on a Mac Pro, the Trash Can Pro, and we love those too. Never had a problem with those either. But it's not worth the cost. And now certainly with the new Mac Pro, you're not going to get your money's worth for FileMaker server. It's just not. It's you're not going to notice a difference. This is the best bang for the buck that we've ever found for what we do. Until this gets higher, as much as FileMaker says, like, it's multi this, multi that. Well, not really. This is the number that matters more than anything else for 90% of everything my clients do. It's going to be that number. So does anyone tested FileMaker server on an M1 Mac by chance? No.
There's a post, I'll drop it in the chat. Early adapter on FM Soup mentions his M1 Mac Mini. I'll go find it. I'll drop it in the chat.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
He had a positive report on it.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's our next machine. Once we know that it works well with the latest, Mac OS.
Conversely, there was some negative news that I think dropped yesterday. Early news, but I just saw it flash by, is that there's some early wear and tear on the SSD, but a software patch coming. So I'm holding back. I'm a little bit cautious.
Oh.
There's a balance. It
Okay.
depends. Yes and no, maybe.
Yeah, we've never had an SSD, and here I am saying this, and I hope Murphy's Law doesn't kick in, but this, we have backups. It's Murphy's Law in reverse. We have so many backups that we're not going to have a problem. It's the time we decide to do one a week, we'll have a problem. The one thing we did not do in our program is we didn't separate the user data from the huge data. And we're still not sorry we did that. And I just don't like having, going into defined fields and going, oh, that's right, that's not here, I got to go somewhere else. It's about once a year that I wish they were separated, but we've never had a problem. These are all together, absolutely all of our tables are sitting in one place, in one file. So anyway, any comments, any pluses, minuses?
Yeah, just
This,
very impressive, Scott. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, you mentioned sending you an email. Where would your email address be?
I guess I could put this in chat. Let me see. And so I don't use this enough. How do I get to everyone? There's everyone. Okay. Another thing, Todd and the group, and I might run this by Todd first, and I know I kind of brushed by it at a meeting a year or two ago. There is another thing I do that's really cool, math intensive. That is like it's a JavaScript, and if I could, there's no rush. If I could sometime this year present something else on, in particular, I did something that's that works with data, and I just want to show you this this right here is one question. Okay, this is a math question, and the answer is here. These numbers right here are the answer, and it does it in JavaScript, and it's amazing. And I'm not talking about my work, which is amazing too. But what this does is really cool stuff, and it's I would like to preempt this with, if I do present it, it's it's going to be a little bit esoteric. I mean, it's going to be I'm not going to write any JavaScript. In fact, the best thing about it is it's mostly not my code. And if you guys have ever gone to GitHub, if you ever have something really crazy you need to do with FileMaker, by far the best way to do it is to go find JavaScript on, for example, GitHub, and let it do, let it find what you need. And then, for example, I won't be able to find it. Never mind. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with JavaScript, but the nicest thing is it's not like gee whizzy. It's like stuff that you don't want to rewrite the wheel. Like that Venn diagram, we're gonna redo that in JavaScript, but I'm not gonna write it. I'm gonna let FileMaker write it for me. I mean, somebody else's JavaScript code, and let FileMaker tap in and hand it off. But this particular thing, Todd, you may remember that I breezed through it in like 5 to 10 minutes about a year ago. And it's something that saves a company about 40 grand a month, just by running this instead of doing it by hand. It can save them. I don't know if they're saving 40 grand a month, but it could save them 40 grand if they followed my instructions.
So Scott, I have a question. With JavaScript in the FileMaker world, a lot of what we see is the visualization, which is, huge, right? And it sounds to me that what you were demonstrating is using JavaScript for its what's the right word? Algorithmic possibilities, right?
Yes, yeah. For example,
in other words, its ability to do some sort of, it looks like you're perhaps doing some freight loading optimization or packing,
blending. Yeah, this is blending optimization.
Okay.
So So yeah,
things that exceed the built-in FileMaker functions and calculation capability.
Yes. Could this be done in FileMaker? The answer is yes. Would I even dare someone to do it? No. It's crazy code. It can be done all within FileMaker, but what this ends up doing is giving you the least cost to make a product that fits. In this case, it's blending steel, but in this case, this particular cost $5,700. Just as something to show you that these same ingredients. This is not the best example. That you can use these same ingredients, and here's 139 ingredients, and here's the least you could do it, $5,500. But I believe you can run this, so you can make the same stuff for 15,000.
So you take the data structure in FileMaker, package it up, and send it as input into a function that exists in JavaScript.
Yes.
And then JavaScript does something phenomenally complicated with it.
Yeah, and JavaScript sends back this bottom row, and this bottom row feeds back into FileMaker. And so yes, it isn't a gee whiz. It's not. It's hidden. There's nothing the user needs to see. You're correct. There's no graphic. There's nothing going on that says, oh, it does this and it builds a picture of your home. It's like, no, none of that's happening. All it's doing is the algorithm.
I think the saving $40,000 is probably enough to get some people's attention.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know until we wrote it. And the key is, it only saves them 40,000 if purchasing ends up purchasing what they need to save them 40,000. Now we estimated 40 to 70,000, but really the average is about $50,000 a month, which is like 5 to 7% of their purchases. But that's assuming they had enough remelt, right? If you don't have it, you can't use it. This was quite an experience building this because, there's a lot of math involved, but all you have to do is the tedium of this. If you can ask the question, if you can get the FileMaker to ask the question properly for whatever JavaScript you have, as long as it's formatted properly, you just have it return the right row, and it's like I say, it's a no-brainer, but when it's working, it's great. And the math involved in this is, I actually paid this guy before he put it up for free. So what happened was, this wasn't on GitHub a long time ago. And there's a simplex method tool where you can run this and solve the problem. And so, oh, that's cool. I can do an example and solve it. Here's the question. So what we did was, we came in here and here's our question, and I'd plunk that into their program and say, solve it. That's their work. None of this is mine at the moment. So we just had to take their work and make sure we could, I had to modify it slightly. Nothing major, but I had to go in and do a little bit of surgery. And then we just had to make sure FileMaker, especially now, is really good at passing parameters now. And this is our solution. And you see this $5,608.04.
Yep.
If I come over here, that's how much it costs. So, we knew we were right when we, started matching. Here's our silicon. Here's our chromium. It's exactly 18.5%. Here's our phosphorus, no more than 2. This method has a great history. Like, the math behind this is genius, but and absolutely none of it mine. But the toughest part was I spent like a week trying to figure out how to parse this. And once you get to this point, everything else is gravy.
I think that makes it, I'm glad this meeting that Todd's recording the meeting, because I think it makes a terrific demo. I'm going to tweet this out, let the world know.
Yeah, we did sell this to one steel company. The strangest thing is it's really hard to get anyone to notice. You know, you tell a steel company. I talked to Kennametal about 2 months before they had financial trouble a couple years ago, and they saw this, loved it, and then everyone I spoke with lost their job. Hopefully, it wasn't me. They were just hurting so much financially that it never happened. But even Kennametal was looking at this. But to get your foot in the door with this, it's one thing to tell people, I can save you 50 grand a year. And they're like, yeah, right. You know, they delete your email. But it is a neat process. I mean, the math behind it's incredible.
So it's basically you're building a product that can be built using different inputs, which have prices. And then you feed it all in and the algorithm just tells you the cheapest way to get the product made.
Yes. This blending steel is the easiest, believe it or not, the best, you know, whether it's blending, you know, this happens to be steel, but you could be making, you know,
cupcakes.
Chocolate.
Cupcakes
Yeah.
could be cupcakes.
Yes, it could.
Or,
yeah,
or
when you
hold
have
on,
a
it could be
fruit-
milkshakes actually.
It could be milkshakes. When you have a fruit juice box that says may contain one or more of the following, this is why, because you need sugar in there. Well,
But that could
people in the
be
US, and they want the cheapest sugar in there, and they want the sugar they have. And this is what they're using. And UPS not turning left in Philadelphia is also this method. Airlines getting all those people from A to B is this method.
what's the name of the method? The
Simplex method.
That's the name of the algorithm.
Simplex. Here. Simplex. The history of the simplex method is amazing too, because a grad student solved it because he thought it was homework. It was unsolvable until he did it over the weekend. So if you're interested,
was this in Boston by any chance? The movie?
No, this is Berkeley.
Oh, a different guy.
Yeah, George Danzig is his name. 1947, I think. Great story. But he thought it was homework. So he did the homework. And it wasn't homework. It was an example of the world's you know, coolest unsolved math problem. And it's because he came late to class. You know, it's a good reason to come late to class. And they gave him his doctorate without him having to go to school. They just shook his hand and said, you know, here's your doctorate. Once
Go away, you're pissing us off.
Well,
you're annoying.
No, they were happy to have him. You know, you want him to stay.
I don't know.
But, yeah, super story. But you can marry that with FileMaker, because how else are you going to do this? These are all the things they were running at that, you know, that location where I sold this. And how are you going to keep track of all these and solve these problems? Here's the weird thing. You can do this in Excel. This company never could. You can't set them up in Excel. It would take you a day to set up these problems. But you can do this type of math in Excel using a product called Solver, S-O-L-V-E-R. It's tedious, it's weird, but it could be done. But it's only worth looking into just to say it's there. But I don't know anyone who uses it in Excel. But to marry this into FileMaker, when you start with this, I mean, here are the examples they were giving. This one even does integer problems, which is cool because you can solve this and say these have to be, you know, integers as opposed to decimals. But I got in touch with the guys that wrote this code, and I paid them some money, not big bucks, but because I found it and said I want to use it. You know, let me give you $1,000, and they said fine. And about 6 months later, they put this up on GitHub for free afterwards. But if you go to GitHub and you search for Simplex and then you go to JavaScript, there are 43 of these. And very few of these can be married into FileMaker. And one of the reasons is this is really tough, this one, to piece together because there's too much going on. Like this isn't going to happen. But when you find the one that has just a few things in it, this one is probably doable. You could probably get this one if you wanted to, because there's not, well, I could be wrong. Here's our JavaScript. Yeah. So this one would probably work if you wanted to play around with it. But I got to say, it's not easy. You got to piece all this stuff together. Because in FileMaker, you're typically going to bring it all into one chunk, one HTML file. And let's see. Yeah, there's one somewhere on this screen, even if it's small, and it's probably not viewable, is the web viewer. I don't even know where it is. The web viewer that does the work is on this screen somewhere. Oh, I bet that's it. Yeah, so it's blank. There's nothing in it, but all that code is there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a robust demo of JavaScript algorithmic use. I might have missed it. There's probably been one, but this seems like a really good demo. It's very cool.
Cool stuff, Scott.
Oh, thanks.
Todd, you're muted if you're talking to us. You're still muted.
Hold on, this is lip reading class now.
He's probably on the phone.
Yeah, apparently my I was holding down the space bar like it says you're supposed to do, but that wasn't working. So, but yeah, the hour is getting late. But certainly I'll echo what everybody else has been saying. Thank you, Scott, for some incredible insight, and just really cool to see what you're able to get FileMaker to do. So thank you for presenting. Also, thank you to Teresa and Thomas at Profile for letting us use the Zoom space as we continue to gather online. I guess, I mean, I know the hour is late, but does anybody have like that one burning question that's have you stumped with your own FileMaker stuff that you want to ask the group before we call it an evening?
And you guys have my email. You know, feel free to, you know, sometimes sometimes I want to share. So, you know, if you have any questions, I'd certainly, on anything that I showed you, I'd be happy to give more detail.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks for sharing, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Thanks for putting on the show, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Todd.
Yep, you're welcome. I guess if everybody doesn't mind holding on, I'll go ahead and share my screen if that's all right, Scott.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Can I say, Todd, just real quick, I don't have a question, but I dropped something on FM Soup that people might find interesting, opening files in a multi-file. No questions, but I posted that today.
Okay.
Bread and butter.
Yeah, I'll make sure that goes out in our follow-up email.
Yeah.
So everybody's, let me get through all of this. So we're gonna bypass the one more thing, and then we do have a couple announcements. So I guess I'll turn it over to Laura for that.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. One of the announcements I wanted to bring up is coming up this weekend. We'll be celebrating International Women's Day that is hosted by FM. There are 2 times that you can come, one Sunday evening and another Monday morning. So I invite you all to come to celebrate women and just have a great discussion and network with people for that. Cool, and we have been doing lunch and learns on Wednesdays, on other weeks at noon, other than FMburgh weeks. March, we have it on March 10th, 17th, and 24th. I would particularly point out March 24th because it's a roundtable session. So we would appreciate any topics that you want us to discuss during that, because we'll cover whatever people want to talk about for FileMaker, and you can see the links there.
Sorry, I hit the button too early, Laura. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And yes, if you want, we have a LinkedIn or Slack group for FMburgh. If you want to be included in either of those, because they're members only, you can contact me at elbits@crossit.com.
All right. I'm sure you've all been waiting for the survey results. Last month, we just had a roundtable discussion about FileMaker resolutions. So the learning JavaScript to enhance our FileMaker solutions was the #1 choice there. Surprisingly, no one wanted to find out a good use case for the Cartesian join. So second question was, how do you create a new FileMaker solution? The majority of us, we just start building from scratch.
Hey, Todd, how do I see that previous survey? Where can I find these results? Is this online?
Yeah, we've been putting them up on our website. There's a page at the Cross website under FMburgh survey results. So those will be posted there. So.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then the last question we asked was, imagine if Pittsburgh were a breed of dog, which breed would it be? So we had a few canned choices, and this was probably the one where we had the most diverse responses. But the slight majority said that Pittsburgh was a Jack Russell because it's small, tough, and opinionated. So I thought about adding, a mixed breed, because around here everybody calls it a Heinz 57, but I thought that would be too easy. People would just pick that automatically. So, but that was our results. Important dates. Our next meeting will be April 7th. Claris Engage is coming up in October. It's a virtual event. And Zack Snyder's Justice League drops on HBO Max here in mid-March. So keep that in mind. The next meeting, we're still in the planning stages, so not sure if it'll be another show and tell or if it'll be a roundtable discussion, but we'll have something. Hopefully you'll see you all back. We'll be sending out a meeting survey. And then I guess the last thing, again, just thank you goes out to Scott, and thank you to Profile Developers for letting us use their Zoom space this evening. So thank you all for joining us, and I guess we'll hopefully see you all next month.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.